I would say this book, there's so much with the scamdemic. There's so many rabbit holes you can go down. But I mean, this is the most like thoroughly documented, accumulation of evidence of what happened inside the hospitals. Covers everything from the ventilation, the medications, the doctors doing cookbook medicine. They no longer had to think. I mean, literally, anyone could come off the street and do what the doctors were doing, because all you had to do is read an algorithm. If this, then do
But
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark,
Please
but
do.
this
Please
raises a
do.
really interesting point, which was really surprising. I had got an indication from Aaron Marie early on that they had brought in inexperienced nurses and doctors. What I hadn't realized was how incredibly bad it was. And I got that. And remember, Aaron Marie was she and I talked really early. So it took a long time for this information to come forward and to consolidate. But here's what they were doing. They opened the doors to doctors from any country. Now, there might be a doctor out here who was brilliantly trained in Hungary or in Germany or Poland, and they moved to the United States and they wanted to practice medicine, and they were told, well, you can be a janitor until you jump through 10,000 hoops to get the license to practice in this country. Okay. Well, what they did with COVID, in addition to setting up special COVID only wings, which we really need to talk about, please remind me if I forget, um, is they open the gates to any doctor from anywhere in the country. Now, how much due diligence can you do? And I don't want to single out any country, but how much due diligence can you do on a doctor from Bangladesh?
Yeah.
Oh, how fast can you do it, right? So they brought in doctors that were not licensed in the United States to run these COVID wards. They also brought in doctors, and this blew my mind, who had never had any ICU experience at all. So when Mark is saying you could take someone off the street and just hand them the checklist of things to do, that's pretty much what they were doing. Now, because being a doctor, being an MD, even a practicing doctor, even an experienced doctor, does not make you multifaceted. And I always say this to people that don't understand that. If you have, let's say you need open heart surgery, you do not go to a podiatrist, right? He's not going to have a clue how to help you. So not only did they bring in foreign doctors, many of whom had a lot of trouble with English. By the way, they paid them insane amounts of money. Nurses in New York City alone contract nurses were being paid $10,000 a week. That's over $500,000 a year for anybody who needs the math. And I needed a calculator for that myself. That's what the nurses got. What did the doctors get? So they were coming from overseas. They were not licensed in the United States, and many of them did not have qualifications to be in those ICU units. There were gynecologists, there were obstetricians, there were podiatrists. Now, on the nursing side, I had heard that they were putting new graduates into the ICUs. Now, that is really bad because a nurse has to go through the book learning, then has to go through the practical learning in a specialty. Again, nurses are specialists. You can't take any old nurse and just put her in the ICU. It's not going to work. But they did that, and they did that with recent grads who did not have experience of any kind. All they had was book knowledge. And then when I got to talk with Nicole, and Nicole's interview is one of the ones that I did recently, relatively recently, she said it's worse than that, Ken. They brought in nursing students that hadn't even gotten their nursing degrees yet. And to use a plain analogy, that's like taking some random person from the back seat of a plane, putting them in front of the controls of the 747 and say, land this baby for us. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. And you know what, please, it's so great we have Mark here. Mark, can you take somebody, even a doctor, let's say they have an MD, a PhD, 50 years of practice as an obstetrician. Can you put them in charge of a vented patient safely?
No, you can't. I mean, a pulmonologist, like, I did contribute to the book. There's a chapter in here from my story, but a pulmonologist, like Dr. Pierre Corey, who I happen to be working for right now, little tidbit there, he would understand. Pulmonologists, ICU hospital doctors would understand how to run a ventilator. But no, a podiatrist, any other kind of a doctor, a doctors that work with skin or GI or specialize in any other part of the body, they're going to have no clue. I mean, a little bit more than the average person might have when it comes to a ventilator, but no, you need to. It's complicated, and you pretty much need to be a pulmonologist or an ICU intensivist.
I mean, let's see, even to make this even a fairer comparison. Let's say somebody has flown a Piper Cub, right? They're a small plane operator, so they know a little bit about planes. I don't think there's an airline in America that would put that person in the cockpit of a 747 and tell them fly to England. So even intelligent people that have been around the medical world, they're just not equipped. They're not prepared.